In November 2024, estate liquidator David Richardson received a collection from a brownstone building demolition in Brooklyn's Park Slope neighborhood. Among the debris from what had once been a prosperous middle-class home, workers discovered a water-damaged trunk containing family photographs, documents, and personal effects dating back to the early 1900s. Richardson specialized in salvaging historical items from urban demolitions, often finding valuable artifacts that would otherwise be lost to development. As he carefully sorted through the water-stained materials, attempting to preserve whatever remained legible, one photograph immediately caught his attention due to its unusual preservation and haunting quality. The image showed what appeared to be a peaceful portrait session from 1905. A well-dressed woman in her 30s sat rigidly in an ornate wooden chair, wearing a high-necked white blouse with intricate lacework and a long dark skirt typical of the Edwardian era. Her hair was styled in the fashionable Gibson girl arrangement, but her hands gripped the chair arms with unusual tension. Beside her stood a man of similar age, wearing a formal three-piece suit, his posture unnaturally stiff and his face bearing an expression of barely controlled fear rather than the confident demeanor expected in professional portraits. The photograph had been taken at a high-end Manhattan studio, evidenced by the elaborate painted backdrop depicting a serene garden scene and the carefully arranged Victorian furniture. Written in faded ink on the back were the words, "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, April 18, 1905, Steinberg Studio, Manhattan." What should have been documentation of middle-class prosperity and respectability would soon reveal evidence of one of New York's most violent and mysterious crimes from the early 20th century, accidentally preserved when technology captured far more than anyone intended. Using professional magnification equipment, Richardson examined every detail of the 1905 photograph with growing unease. The image quality was exceptional for its era, showing the skilled work of Friedrich Steinberg, one of Manhattan's premier portrait photographers who served the city's affluent middle class with meticulous attention to technical excellence. As Richardson studied the couple's positioning and expressions more carefully, he realized their rigid postures were not typical of formal Edwardian photography. While long exposure times required stillness, the subject's body language suggested extreme tension that went beyond normal photographic requirements. Both individuals appeared to be holding their breath, their eyes wide with what could only be described as terror. The woman's knuckles were white as she gripped her chair, and subtle trembling was visible in her shoulders, despite the camera's requirements for absolute stillness. The man's face showed beads of perspiration, unusual for a controlled studio environment, and his jaw was clenched in a way that suggested he was fighting to maintain composure under extreme duress. Most shocking, however, was what appeared in a large ornate mirror positioned behind the photographer's setup, intended to add depth and elegance to the studio composition. The mirror's reflection revealed the true reason for the couple's terror. Clearly visible in the reflected image was a third figure, a man holding what appeared to be a revolver pointed directly at the photographer and his subjects. The gunman's reflection showed him standing in the studio's entrance, effectively blocking any escape route while maintaining control over everyone present. His stance and positioning indicated this was not a spontaneous crime, but a calculated robbery of a prosperous business that regularly handled valuable equipment and wealthy clients. The accidental documentation in the mirror's reflection had preserved evidence of a violent crime that had occurred over a century ago, turning what appeared to be a peaceful family portrait into testimony of terror and violence. Richardson contacted Dr. Amanda Foster, a historian at Columbia University, who specialized in early 20th century photography and crime documentation. Foster had extensive experience analyzing period photographs for evidence of social conditions and historical events that were often poorly documented in official records. Dr. Foster arrived at Richardson's Brooklyn workshop equipped with advanced magnification devices and comprehensive knowledge of 1905 photographic techniques. Her examination began with rigorous authentication procedures to verify the image's age and technical characteristics, followed by detailed analysis of the composition and the disturbing reflection. This photograph represents exceptional documentation of early 20th century studio photography, Foster observed, studying the lighting setup and equipment visible in the mirror. Steinberg's studio was among New York's most prestigious, serving clients who could afford sessions costing several weeks' wages for working-class families. The technical analysis confirmed the image's authenticity. The photographic processes, paper type, and chemical composition all matched standards from 1905. The lighting setup and studio arrangement were consistent with Steinberg's documented methods and equipment inventory from that period. Foster's examination of the gunman's reflection revealed disturbing details about the crime in progress. The weapon appeared to be a Colt police-positive revolver, a firearm commonly available in 1905 and frequently used in urban robberies. The perpetrator's positioning suggested professional criminal experience. He had positioned himself to control all exits while maintaining visual contact with his victims. The subject's expressions and body language are consistent with individuals under immediate threat of violence, Foster noted, studying the couple's faces through high-powered magnification. This is not typical photographic nervousness, but genuine terror. The long exposure time required by 1905 technology means they maintain these positions under extreme duress for several minutes. Foster recommended expanding the investigation to include New York Police Department archives and newspaper records from April 1905 to determine whether this robbery had been documented in official records. Dr. Foster began researching New York's criminal records from April 1905, focusing on robberies involving photography studios and businesses serving the city's affluent middle class. Her investigation revealed that early 20th century Manhattan experienced significant crime rates, particularly targeting establishments that handled valuable equipment or served wealthy clientele. The New York Police Department archives, housed at the Municipal Archives, contained detailed incident reports from this period. Photography studios presented attractive targets for criminals because they contained expensive German-made cameras, precision lenses, and often kept cash payments from affluent clients who preferred to pay immediately for portrait services. Foster discovered that Friedrich Steinberg's studio, located at 247 Fifth Avenue near Madison Square, operated in a district known for both prosperity and criminal activity. The area attracted wealthy shoppers and business professionals, but also drew pickpockets, confidence men, and armed robbers who targeted successful establishments. Police records from April 18, 1905 contained a brief incident report that made Foster's investigation take a dramatic turn. Armed robbery reported at Steinberg Photography Studio, Fifth Avenue. Multiple victims. Detective Bureau investigating. No arrests at this time. The report's brevity was typical of 1905 police documentation, but its existence confirmed that the crime captured in the photograph had indeed occurred and had been officially reported. Foster realized she was examining not just historical curiosity, but actual evidence from an unsolved century-old crime. Further examination of police records revealed that spring 1905 had seen a series of similar robberies targeting upscale Manhattan businesses. The perpetrator's methods, as suggested by his positioning in the photograph, matched patterns documented in other incidents, blocking exits, controlling multiple victims simultaneously, and targeting businesses during peak operating hours when cash and valuables would be readily available. Foster's research indicated that Steinberg's studio robbery was part of a broader criminal pattern that had terrorized Manhattan's business district during this period. Foster's investigation into Friedrich Steinberg's photography business revealed extensive documentation of one of Manhattan's most successful portrait studios during the early 1900s. Steinberg had immigrated from Germany in 1895. Bringing advanced photographic techniques and establishing a reputation for technical excellence that attracted New York's emerging middle class. The New York Historical Society's archives contained Steinberg's business records, including detailed client lists, financial ledgers, and correspondence that provided insight into the studio's operations and the circumstances surrounding the April 1905 robbery. Steinberg's appointment book for April 18, 1905, showed that the Harrison portrait session had been scheduled for 2 p.m., with payment of $12.50 arranged in advance, a significant sum indicating this was a special occasion portrait, possibly commemorating a wedding anniversary or business success. The studio's layout, documented in insurance records and business correspondence, showed that Steinberg operated from a ground-floor space with large street-facing windows for natural lighting, a reception area for clients, and a main photography room equipped with professional cameras, lighting equipment, and various props and backdrops. Most significantly, Foster discovered that the April 18, 1905 robbery was not Steinberg's first encounter with criminal activity. Police reports from 1904 showed 2 previous incidents, a break-in during which expensive lenses were stolen, and an attempted robbery that had been interrupted by passing pedestrians. Steinberg's correspondence with insurance companies revealed his growing concerns about security. A letter dated March 1905, just weeks before the robbery, expressed his intention to install additional locks and consider hiring security assistants during evening hours, when he often worked alone developing photographs. The business records showed that Steinberg's studio typically handled significant amounts of cash, as many clients paid immediately upon completion of their sessions. This practice, combined with the valuable equipment and the studio's street-level location, made it an attractive target for criminals familiar with photography businesses. Foster expanded her research to identify and learn more about the Harrison family, whose terror had been accidentally preserved in the mirror's reflection. New York's 1905 city directory and census records provided detailed information about the couple whose peaceful portrait session had become evidence of violent crime. Henry Harrison, age 34, worked as a manager at the Consolidated Edison Company, one of New York's major utilities. His position represented significant professional achievement for someone who had immigrated from Ireland in the 1890s. Margaret Harrison, age 29, had been employed as a bookkeeper before marriage, but had recently left work to focus on domestic responsibilities, typical for middle-class women of the era. The couple lived in a respectable apartment building on East 23rd Street, within walking distance of Henry's downtown office and convenient to Manhattan's shopping and cultural districts. Their decision to commission a professional portrait from Steinberg's expensive studio suggested they were celebrating some form of personal or professional milestone. Property records showed that Henry had recently purchased life insurance and had been promoted to a supervisory position at Consolidated Edison, indicating growing financial stability that would have motivated them to document their success through professional photography. Foster discovered that the Harrisons had been married in 1903 and were part of Manhattan's growing Irish-American middle class, a community that placed significant emphasis on demonstrating respectability and social advancement through careful attention to public appearances and social activities. Church records from St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church showed that both Henry and Margaret were active in parish activities and had contributed to various charitable organizations, further indicating their integration into Manhattan's respectable middle-class society. The tragic irony was that their attempt to document their American success and social respectability had instead preserved evidence of their encounter with the violent crime that plagued even prosperous districts of early 20th century Manhattan. Foster's investigation expanded to examine the broader criminal context surrounding the Steinberg studio robbery, revealing that the April 1905 incident was part of an organized crime wave that had targeted Manhattan businesses throughout the spring of 1905. New York Police Department records documented a series of similar robberies between February and June 1905, all following the same methodology visible in the photograph's mirror reflection. A single gunman blocking exits, controlling multiple victims, and targeting businesses that handled cash transactions and valuable merchandise. The perpetrator's pattern showed sophisticated criminal planning. He struck during busy afternoon hours when businesses would have maximum cash on hand and multiple customers present, creating more witnesses to control, but also more confusion that might aid his escape. Police reports described the gunman as approximately 30 years old, well-dressed enough to blend in with middle-class clientele, and demonstrating familiarity with the targeted business's operations. His ability to identify optimal timing and positioning suggested he conducted surveillance before each robbery. The crime wave had terrorized Manhattan's business district, with newspapers reporting that merchants were demanding increased police protection. The New York Tribune published several articles during spring 1905 describing the gentleman bandit, who was preying upon respectable establishments with impunity. Detective reports indicated that police suspected the robberies were connected, but had no solid leads on the perpetrator's identity. The crimes were carefully planned to minimize evidence, with the gunman typically escaping during the confusion immediately following each incident. Foster realized that the Steinberg studio photograph represented unprecedented evidence of these crimes. While police reports provided victim statements and basic descriptions, no other visual documentation existed showing the perpetrator in the act of committing robbery. The mirror's accidental capture of the gunman's image provided details that could potentially have aided the 1905 investigation, including his physical appearance, weapon choice, and operational methods, information that had been lost to history until the photograph's rediscovery. Foster's research into the official police investigation revealed the limitations of early 20th century criminal investigation techniques and the challenges that prevented resolution of the Manhattan robbery spree. Detective Bureau reports from spring 1905 showed that investigators had identified connections between the various robberies but lacked the forensic tools and communication systems necessary for effective criminal pursuit. Fingerprinting was still experimental, photographic evidence was limited, and coordination between different police precincts was often inadequate. The Steinberg studio case presented particular challenges for investigators. While multiple witnesses existed, Steinberg, the Harrison couple, and possibly other clients who might have been present, the trauma of the incident had affected their ability to provide consistent descriptions of the perpetrator. Police interview notes from April 1905 showed significant discrepancies in witness accounts. Steinberg reported that the gunman was approximately 5'8" with brown hair, while Henry Harrison described him as taller with darker coloring. Margaret Harrison had been too traumatized to provide useful details, and her statement consisted primarily of expressions of fear and requests for protection. The investigation was further complicated by the perpetrator's apparent familiarity with police procedures. Evidence suggested he had planned escape routes carefully and had avoided leaving physical traces that might aid identification. His choice of timing and locations demonstrated understanding of police patrol schedules and response capabilities. Detective reports indicated growing frustration within the police department as the robbery spree continued without resolution. Commissioner William McAdoo had assigned additional detectives to the case and had coordinated with business organizations to develop prevention strategies, but the perpetrator's careful planning continued to frustrate official efforts. Foster discovered that the investigation had been officially suspended in August 1905 after no new incidents occurred for several weeks. The case remained unsolved, with police theorizing that the perpetrator had either been arrested for other crimes, had left New York, or had been killed in criminal activity elsewhere. Foster's research uncovered evidence that the Manhattan robbery spree had ended with a violent confrontation that finally brought resolution to the cases, though not in the way investigators had hoped. Police records from July 15, 1905, documented a shooting incident at the Merchants Bank on Broadway, just 3 blocks from Steinberg's photography studio. The incident report described an attempted robbery that had ended when the perpetrator was shot and killed by a bank security guard during his escape attempt. The dead man's description matched witness accounts from the previous robberies. Approximately 30 years old, well-dressed, carrying a Colt Police positive revolver identical to the weapon visible in the Steinberg studio photograph's mirror reflection. Detective reports noted that the perpetrator's clothing and personal effects suggested he had been living comfortably, possibly from proceeds of his criminal activities. His possession of expensive items and quality clothing supported theories that he had been successfully operating as a professional criminal for an extended period. Most significantly, police found in his possession detailed notes about Manhattan businesses, including sketches of building layouts and observations about security procedures and cash handling practices. Among these materials was a notation about Steinberg, Fifth Avenue, afternoon sessions, wealthy clients, minimal security. The discovery of this documentation provided posthumous confirmation that the photographer's studio robbery had been part of the organized crime spree and demonstrated the level of planning the perpetrator had invested in his criminal activities. Foster realized that Friedrich Steinberg's photograph had inadvertently preserved the only known image of this criminal, whose identity was never conclusively established, despite the resolution of his crime wave through his death. The photograph's mirror reflection represented unique historical documentation of a criminal who had terrorized Manhattan's business district for months before meeting his end in the violent conclusion typical of early 20th century urban crime. In March 2025, Foster prepared to publish her findings as both an academic study and a public exhibition designed to illuminate the realities of urban crime during New York's rapid growth period in the early 1900s. Foster collaborated with the New York Police Museum and the Museum of the City of New York to create an exhibition featuring the Steinberg studio photograph, alongside documentation of early 20th century criminal investigation techniques and the challenges faced by law enforcement during this period. The photograph itself became the centerpiece of discussions about accidental historical documentation and the ways in which technology sometimes preserves evidence that was never intended to be recorded. The mirror's reflection provided insights into criminal methodology and victim experiences that were rarely captured in official police records. Foster worked with genealogical researchers to contact potential descendants of the Harrison family and Friedrich Steinberg, several of whom expressed fascination with their ancestors' inadvertent role in documenting criminal history. The Harrison family descendants were particularly moved to learn that their ancestors had survived the traumatic incident and had continued living productive lives in New York. Research revealed that Henry Harrison had been promoted again at Consolidated Edison and had become active in business security organizations following his experience as a crime victim. Margaret Harrison had overcome her trauma from the incident and had become involved in women's safety advocacy within their church community. Friedrich Steinberg had continued operating his photography studio until 1920, when he retired and sold his business. His technical innovation and artistic skill had contributed significantly to the development of professional photography in New York during the early 20th century. The photograph stands today as testament to the unexpected ways in which historical events are preserved, and the power of technology to capture moments that reveal broader social realities. The accidental documentation of the 1905 robbery provides unique insights into urban crime, victim experiences, and the challenges of maintaining law and order during one of America's most rapid periods of urban growth and social change. The mirror's reflection continues to serve as a reminder that behind the facade of Edwardian respectability and prosperity lay complex realities of violence, fear, and the daily struggles of ordinary people navigating an increasingly complex urban environment.